This week from the Global Lane in Washington, standing arm in arm in defense of Middle East Christians, the voice of the Martyrs, 50 years of serving the persecuted church. And on the home front, one Washington group that is trying to unveil the truth about Clinton emails, that tarmac meeting, and Russian uranium. And I'll drive it home about Richard Wurmbrand and his legacy. And it's right here, right now, from the Global Lane. Now that ISIS has been defeated in Iraq and only controls about 5% of the territory in Syria, it looks like the caliphate is dead. So what now for the Christians of Iraq and Syria? Two patriarchs from the oldest churches in the Middle East were in Washington this week. Let's listen in on what they had to say.
We hear it always that displaced and refugees ought to be given a chance to live in dignity wherever they may be. Those nations have closed their borders and have prevented those people from entering into their countries, and they left them under the rain and in the snow. Where is the human dignity in all that? If the family is living under a tent and you've given that family something to eat, do you think and do you feel that that's enough for their human dignity to be safeguarded? If they really want human dignity, the first thing they have to do is stop the war and allow those people to go back to their countries, the countries they have built and the civilizations they have built together, in order to be able to live there in dignity. Unfortunately, the way those people were left on the roads, were left under very difficult circumstances, says that deep down, those people were not considered even as human beings. Since the very beginning of the war, we, the patriarchs and all the heads of churches and religious denominations, we raised our voice and we wanted the war to stop. And we tried to tell the world that the fate of Christians and the fate of all those countries are in jeopardy. Apparently there was a question which said, is the secularism of the West responsible for not intervening to help the Christians in the Middle East? Our problem is not with the populations of the countries. Our problems are with the politicians who do not give enough value to the Christian presence in the Middle East. The countries don't care about the Christian presence, nor about the effect that the Christian presence has on those civilizations. The politicians and countries have interests. They try to find where they can get petrol, money, and everything else. But they forget that if the Christians disappear from the Middle East and the civilization that Christians and Muslims have built together, this will lead to a disastrous situation, not only for the Middle East, but also for people all over the world, because the Muslim moderation will disappear.
As you know, here in the United States, there's been this push for a possible homeland for Christians in Kurdistan and even parts of Syria. If there's a balkanization of Syria after the war, what do these two beatitudes feel about that?
إنه الحديث عن الإثنيات
to talk about ethnic groups
والقوميات
and nationalities
والطوائف
and denominations
وإلى ما هنالك
and other
هذا
separate issues
هذا لا يناسب المسيحيين أولا.
does not fit the Christians to begin with.
نحن نريد لبنانا واحدا.
We want Lebanon to be one Lebanon
سوريا واحدة كل آمنة.
and one Syria united
and عراق واحد
and one united Iraq.
وهكذا. وأرجو الانتباه كثيرا لهذا الموضوع إذا كنا نريد أو نتكلم عن حماية المسيحيين.
This is very vital if we were to talk about the defense of Christians.
وإذا بدي أكون جريء أكثر من ذلك، أريد أن أقول على الأقل فيما يتعلق بمصيرنا في بلادنا أنه لنا قول، يعني ولو لنا قول.
We have something to say.
عنا رأينا، نحن أصحاب البلد ونحن اللي عايشين.
We have our own opinion. We are the people who live there. Allow me that we are not in a position to accept any solutions that are given or imposed on us. We meet here and everywhere expressing our own words and concerns, but we do not want to be reduced as being only listeners to what is dictated on us.
ولكن أيضا هن يسمعونا أيضا.
That they should also hear us what we have to say to them. We are grateful for all those who love for the welfare and the well-being of our country.
ولكن من حقنا أن ننشد وحدة بلادنا.
It is our right to seek unity of our own
ومن
country.
حقنا أن يكون لنا قول في مصيرنا وفي مستقبلنا.
And our rights is to express our own destiny and our own plight.
Also here in Washington, D.C., the Voice of the Martyrs celebrating its 50th anniversary. It was founded in October 1967. These are some of the people that attended the event here. The keynote speaker was Petr Jasek. He spent 445 days in a Sudanese prison. We interviewed him last spring, shortly after he was released. Also in attendance at the event was one of his cellmates, Pastor Hassan Cody. Why do you feel that God allowed this to happen to you?
First of all, God allows this to happen to me just to encourage the church in Sudan, because I have never seen the church in Sudan come together and then to have the fast and prayer meeting together, and other churches around the world that are praying for us since we were in the prison. And for me, I believe this is time that God wants to move all the Christians out around the world just to pray for us and pray for Sudan especially. And God also, number two, God wants also to let the world to know what is happening in the country, what is happening in Sudan for the Christians, for demolishing the churches and harassing the pastors and the Christians in Sudan. So these are things that is happening in Sudan and no one knows.
What was the worst part of your imprisonment? What was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing was when I was arrested in the security prison for 5 months, because every prisoner in that prison is supposed to get the visit after 2 weeks. But for me, they didn't allow me to see my family or my family to visit me in the prison. And it was really very hard for me, and was really a hard part for my family also. And they don't know where am I. And other people, they just told them that Hassan is not alive anymore. He's killed.
What should the body of Christ know about the importance of prayer?
First of all, I want them to continue praying for the Christian and the churches in Sudan. As I'm talking with you, last Sunday, five of the pastors were arrested, and still the things going in Sudan. Things are not stopping, but still things is going in Sudan. And let them know that a lot of Christians that are persecuted in Sudan, a lot of churches were demolished in Sudan. So there's no freedom of religions in Sudan. There's no freedom of the worship in Sudan. Let them pray, particularly for the churches in Sudan. That there will be freedom, and we will get even licenses to have the churches, to build the churches.
How important was prayer while you were in prison? For you as a prisoner, knowing people were praying for you?
The prayer was really powerful, and we were very encouraged enough We were not fearing anything. Even our charges, it can sentence us for the death, but we don't care about ourselves. We decided that if God allows us to die, let us die.
Hassan, what impressed you the most about your cellmate, Petr Jasek?
It was really, I was not thinking one day we will meet with Peter, but it was really unbelievable to meet with Peter. And me and my wife, when we saw him and when he hugged me, we really cried. I cried and my wife cried.
I have to say this was the most joyful moment of today, today's event, to meeting those brothers who were spending 14 and a half months with me in prison. Of course, the first months in prison we were not together, we didn't know about each other, but later on we were able to stay together, we were able to encourage each other. So for us to be here now, free in a free country, was an amazing moment, and I had to really hold my tears back, because this moment was something that I was always looking forward, even when I was in prison, when we meet one day and we will be free.
And Peter, it's been 9 months since you were released. What now? I mean, what has the Lord been talking to you about now, and what have you learned since then? Because I'm sure from the time we met, you probably have different thoughts and different things have come to you.
I have to say that in one sense I'm missing my time with the Lord, that I had the privilege to be in prison for 3 months in solitary confinement and read the Bible. I wish I would have that much time still, being able to do it every day and not to do anything. But I have been also hearing from the Lord, and I know that He is preparing a new role for me. Of course, I am not in the situation that I could travel to certain countries, because I was too much exposed through my time in prison and after my release. But I'm fully confident that the Lord has opened a new door for me to be even a louder voice for those persecuted Christians, and to be their voice in the free countries, and also encourage many other believers to follow Christ no matter what will happen in their lives.
According to the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom took a step backwards last year around the world. So what can be done to rectify that? I talked to Senator James Lankford.
The challenge of protecting religious liberty is it has to be a priority of the State Department. Visiting with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, this is a big issue for him. He's working through the restructuring process, and let me give you what that really looks like. Some people say, so what, we're shuffling the decks again. Well, currently in the State Department, there's not a single office that works on imprisoned individuals all over the world. There is no centralized strategy. It's only this hodgepodge in each region of it. We don't have that. So we're trying to be able to get that centralized strategy. That'll be extremely important. Raising the issue for the Ambassador at Large of Religious Liberty, not to just have a title and have that individual, but to actually allow them to be able to do their job. That'll be Governor Sam Brandback in the days ahead. He's been through committee at this process. We have to get him confirmed. He's in a long line and a slow process on the Senate floor, as some of our Democratic colleagues are trying to slow down all nominations on the floor right now. Once we can get him to the floor, he'll pass overwhelmingly. And then he has the responsibility to work with every region, every ambassador, to make sure someone's trained in that region, to make sure someone's equipped, thinking about religious liberty, pushing that forward, working on the imprisoned individuals in that community as well.
Okay, Sam Brownback, Rex Tillerson, is this president committed?
This president is committed to it. In fact, it's interesting. When I bump into the president often, he'll catch me and say, religious liberty, we got to talk about it, don't we? And so he knows when he sees me, the topic that I'm going to bring up to him, and he's very aware of it and also very interested in it. So if he can continue to put people in place in government, allow them to be able to do their job, whether it is our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, releasing this large document about what is going to be our standard as a government on religious liberty, as that document's released and then applied in every agency, that'll be very meaningful. As the State Department's allowed to be able to use that and to be able to run with that, all those are very significant to us. So it's going to take some time, but that has already begun.
The Voice of the Martyrs, 50 years celebrating tonight.
Right.
How important it is to have this group in Oklahoma and worldwide?
Obviously, it's a ministry and it's a focus that is a worldwide focus. For those of us that are in Oklahoma, it's amazing to me the number of people I run into don't even know that they exist because they function all over the world. Obviously, everyone in Northeast Oklahoma is extremely familiar with the ministry and what they do. but this critical voice to churches, to individuals, to youth groups, and to be able to say, be aware of what the cost of discipleship really looks like and has looked like for 2,000 years. Be aware of how to be able to pray and engage for people, and be aware for government and that poke that they constantly have to government to say, do not forget about the persecuted church, about religious liberty, and about individuals around the world that are currently suffering simply for being a Christian.
This week, the Washington Post reported that Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee paid for political research on Donald Trump. The research was carried out by a group called Fusion GPS, and it came with what some people say was a fake dossier on Trump campaign collusion with the Russians. It comes as a congressional committee investigates alleged bribery and collusion in the sale of 20% of the nation's uranium reserves to Russia. Judicial Watch is a Washington, D.C. legal group that is trying to learn the truth. I sat down with Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president, for more. Let's talk a little bit about Uranium One. It looks like it has the potential to be a big scandal. 20% of the U.S. uranium supply was sold to the Russians at a time when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And we know in turn that the Clinton Foundation and her husband Bill received money from the Russians around the same time. What do we know about that? Hillary says there's nothing to it, it's all baloney, there's no evidence of anything.
Well, we need a credible investigation. In my view, Uranium One is the Russia scandal. You had tens of millions of dollars going into the Clinton Foundation from entities that benefited from the Uranium One decision-making by the Obama administration. Now we know that the Obama administration's FBI and Justice Department were investigating bribery schemes associated with the effort to get the Uranium One deal approved by the Obama administration. That was kept secret and suppressed from the American people. And on top of that, you had, and the Judicial Watch uncovered this, $500,000 in cash directly go to Bill Clinton for a speech he made in Russia from a Uranium One connected entity. Now, when you give money to Bill Clinton, remember Hillary is still married to him, they share the wealth there. So she was sharing the wealth in terms of Russia cash while she was Secretary of State. So if that ain't evidence, I don't know what would be.
Tom, it was June 27, 2016. Former President Bill Clinton on a tarmac in Phoenix had a 30 to 40-minute meeting with then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. That occurred about 6 days before Hillary Clinton, his wife, gave testimony to the FBI in the email scandal. So what do we know now? I know you've gotten some documents from the FBI, some notes. What can you tell us now?
Well, we don't know much because, unfortunately, this Justice Department under President Trump and Jeff Sessions' leadership specifically blacked out the talking points the Obama Justice Department came up with after the meeting. We do know it caused Mr. Comey some concern, and even Loretta Lynch acknowledged that it cast a cloud over her investigation. But we also found out as a result of our litigation to try to get access to the records about what went on, that the FBI had some records. Now, the FBI had already told Judicial Watch it had no records about this meeting, and they had to go back and do a new search because the last one didn't find anything, and they just told us recently they found 30 pages of records. So we probably caught the FBI red-handed here, hiding records from us about the meeting. It'd be interesting to see what they finally give us, if anything.
And we know Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin, her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner, had 2,800 emails on his computer.
Well, Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner unsurprisingly shared a laptop. Abedin had an email account on Hillary Clinton's illicit email server that's so much in the news. And now the FBI sent to the State Department, we just found out, that there are 2,800 records the FBI found and sent to the State Department that are government records that were Huma Abedin's on Anthony Weiner's laptop. And so we should be getting those records by the end of the year. If the past is any indication of what we'll see, we'll find classified information, we'll find pay-to-play information, information that shouldn't be on anyone's personal laptop, let alone Anthony Weiner's.
Now we head back to the studio for my drive-at-home commentary on Richard Wurmbrand, his legacy, and the importance of prayer for the persecuted church. Voice of the Martyrs founder, Pastor Richard Wurmbrand, spent 14 years in Romanian prisons. After he was freed, he testified before the U.S. Congress. People disbelieved allegations that he and other imprisoned Christians had been abused by their communist captors. So Wurmbrand removed his shirt to expose the truth. Scars in his back revealed how he had been tortured with flaming hot pokers. He detailed his prison experience in the book Tortured for Christ. So is Wurmbrand's legacy one of Christian mistreatment and persecution? No. What I've learned from Pastor Wurmbrand and other Christian prisoners of the faith like Petr Jasek is that there is great victory in the fellowship of suffering. And from meeting with many former Christian prisoners all over the world over the years, I've learned about the importance of prayer for them, their families, and for suffering Christians around the world. And that's true fellowship in the suffering. On November 5th, American Christians in many churches around the world will remember them on the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. That's IDOP Sunday. Some churches will celebrate it a week later. Now, each year, VOM produces an IDOP video for sharing in churches and Bible studies. And I've got to tell you, I think this year's is the best they've ever produced. It's about Richard Wurmbrand's prison experience, and it's called Solitary Prayer. So watch until the end, because you'll never guess what he prayed for.
Oggi da fumare? Vuoi un cocktail?
Да.
Очень нравится. Pizza? Pizza, no?
On February 29th, 1948, a pastor was kidnapped from the streets of Romania. He would disappear for 14 years and endure horrific torture for his refusal to renounce Christ. And in the midst of this suffering, he witnessed the incredible power of Christ's love.
After being arrested, I spent the next 3 years in a solitary cell. It was enough to drive any man mad. The martyr Savonarola wrote, "There are those who believe in God, and those who, just as sincerely, believe that they believe." Now I had to ask myself, did I believe in God?
That we are persecuted but not abandoned. So please do not abandon us.
My wife Sabina had also been arrested.
Sabina Wurmbrand.
My son Mihai, left orphaned. Sabina would spend the next 18 months in a slave labor camp on the Danube.
Sabina! Sabina!
In these my darkest hours, my only hope was in prayer. Of course, in prison, prayer was forbidden. In spite of the beatings, I prayed every day. I prayed God would give me strength to endure. And of course, I prayed for my family. My feet were beaten so often and so brutally, I would never walk normally again. I'm sorry if a crocodile eats a man, but I cannot reproach the crocodile. I had learned the same can be said of my torturers. Communism had stripped them of any form of humanity, and only God's love could restore them.
Iar te rogi, mă? Iar te rogi? Ești tâmpit! Băiatul tău nu mai are casă, nevastă ta e arestată! Viața ta e distrusă, mă, băiatule, și tu te rogi în continuare la Dumnezeul al tău, care nici măcar n-are chip! Pentru ce căcat te mai rogi, mă? Pentru ce te mai rogi tu acum?
Mă rugam pentru tine. I hated the sin, but never the sinner. And some we even won to Christ.
An amazing story, isn't it? Our thanks to the Voice of the Martyrs for allowing us to share that video with you. You can download a copy online at their website, persecution.com, or request a DVD. Show it in your churches. Because Jesus said in Matthew 5:43-44, "You've heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." So let's pray for the persecuted church and for those we normally wouldn't want to pray for. I guess for me, that means people like Kim Jong-un and Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini and others. But on this November 5th and every day, let's remember those in bonds as if bound with them and pray for the persecuted church. Well, that's it from the Global Lane this week. Until next week, be blessed.